Today I've got Travis Bryant with me. This is a special interview for me, Travis. Cullen and I, and Cullen's not obviously on this episode as of right now. He is in the middle of like a snowstorm, so he might pop on, he might not. Who knows what happens? A lot of bands like we'll interview, and we like the band or whatever, but it's like not a band that has been like a part of our lives for 20 years. And Travis, you were a part of a project called Terminal back in the day in the mid 2000s, and that has been a band that to this day I absolutely love. I still listen to your guys' record all the time. I've even defended you guys on this podcast. I was just mentioning we play. Usually we'll do like kind of game type of episodes, and I don't remember what episode it was, but we did like maybe like underrated tooth and nail bands, or maybe it was something about like tooth and nail bands based on like a certain genre, and I went uh just to the grave defending Terminal and why like Terminal should have been like one of the biggest bands out there. And for whatever reason, and I'm sure we'll get into all of this, it just didn't quite turn out that way. But I will still go to the grave believing you guys had what it took to be incredible, to take off in the music industry. And anyway, I will still defend that to my grave. So anyway, I'm sure we'll talk about Terminal, but before we dive into all of that, how are you doing today, Travis?
I'm doing really well. Thank you. And what an honor. That was a beautiful introduction. Uh, Dang, that was a cool thing to say. I checked out the artists you all have interviewed on the podcast before, like earlier this afternoon. I don't know why I haven't listened to it because it's like so up my alley to like check
Right.
all of this stuff out. So that's cool, and I'm glad to be able to share it and just draw more attention to it. But man, you've interviewed so many artists that were like so influential to me that that was high honor the way you introduced me. So thank you.
Well, yeah. Again, we've interviewed some cool artists in our day. But yeah, this also it really truly feels like wow, this is amazing. I get to talk to Travis Bryant. Like I remember seeing you guys' like photos in 2005 and seeing you guys on Pure Volume, and it's like now. Like I would have never guessed like 20 years from then or 15 years from there that I would ever be able to like talk to that person that was in those photos. And
You're
it's
doing
funny. I'm
something
sure you guys
cool.
like never thought of yourselves as like, wow, we're this like big deal or whatever. Like, I'm sure you guys never thought about that. But for me, when I was like in 11 years old or 12 years old and like starting to get into this music, you guys would have been
Hmm.
one of those bands where I was like, this is the kind of band that like if I were ever in a band, like that's the kind of band I would want to be. So I'm sure you guys didn't think of yourselves that way, but like for 12-year-old Mason, that's certainly how I thought about you guys.
I love so much that you were so young because I was talking to Courtney, my partner, last night, and I don't know what we were doing. We were watching a Stars game, Dallas Stars hockey, and I was talking to her about, like, how young I was when I was into these bands. I was talking about, like, Rage Against the Machine, Evil
Right.
Empire, like, came out when I was, like, 10 years old, and I was like, I would have been front and center. I was, like, begging my dad to take
Yes.
me to a Rage Against the Machine show, n but I never got any sort of experiences like that until I found in, high school when I was 14, like, the scene of the Christian
Right.
hardcore rock, like whatever it was, wherever you were, but like the tooth and nail kind of scene. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was like the same way. And I was like one of those weird kids that was listening to Me Without You when I was 10 years old. Like I still have distinct memories of
God, they're
jumping
so
on like
good.
purevolume.com, listening to Me Without You when I for sure I knew I was like in fourth grade or whatever. Like I know for
Yeah.
sure I was 10. So
Yeah.
it's I was like one of those weird kids that, instead of like going through I don't know who would have been like super big at that time, like maybe like Backstreet Boys or something. But like, a lot of those kind of pop bands at that time, like instead of listening to that, I was this weird kid listening to Me Without You or, whatever. And so I always
Which
felt
is
like I kind
so
of had to
sick.
hide my music taste because not only was it like weird music for my peers, but also it was Christian. That would have made it like especially kind of like weird for a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people I
had
grew up with.
friends like when I was young and I was into the stuff that was on like MTV or MTV2 and I'd go to my grandma's house, I would get to watch like cable and I'd be like, "Oh my God, like what's going on?" But I definitely had friends who were into like DC Talk, like Jesus Freak, which is
Right.
a sick song. It's such a good song. but, and I was like, "What the hell are you listening to?" You know? Like, there was definitely a, negative connotation or something
Totally.
socially with that at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it felt like a breakthrough. And, it was like around that time that I also learned about like Switchfoot and Reliant K and some of those bands. And I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, this seems different than Blink 182 or Hoobastank or whoever else again was big at the time. So I realized like, okay, like there's something different, and they maybe it's because they're Christian, but also it was like music that I enjoyed. It wasn't Newsboys or Audio Adrenaline or what. It wasn't my
Yeah, it
parents'
didn't
music.
suck, like, it was good, yeah. I
So
think
that was a big
also
deal.
yeah, I think you and I also, you know, at different stages, ages, like, grew up in kind of the heyday of, like, Christian music. Like, I don't
Oh yeah,
know if I'm
absolutely.
blinded by my own experience, but I think the Christian, like, rock, hardcore, like, whatever world at that time was really, like, it wasn't, like, trailing what was cool, it was, like, defining what was cool. Like, there were very important bands that were doing cool things, like,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, like, Under Oath and, I don't you know, I could the Juliana Theory, like, all of the
Yeah.
like, these were great bands that were cool and, like, influential and not like, you know, not like 4 years behind the time or something.
Yeah, they were cutting edge. Yeah, absolutely. Well, along those lines, let's talk about how you just even got into music. So before we dive into the history of Terminal, I'd love to just hear how you got into music. Obviously, it sounds like you grew up with a lot of music like that that we had all grown up with, and so I'm guessing like that might have inspired you to start playing guitar or start singing or whatever it was. But I'd love to hear just kind of those beginning years of how you got into music.
Yeah, so, I think, like, if I'm being completely honest, and I'll try to be as honest as I can in this talk, but, I remember, like, my first time, like, really being like, "Man, I wanna make music." I was probably, I don't know, like, 12 years old or something, and, like, traded a dude, like, something I had of value at lunch for his, like, Marilyn Manson CD, like, the Antichrist Superstar album, and I was like, "This is so sick," and then I traded someone something else, like a Talkboy pen that I had traded for at school to, like, get a mini, it was like a mini cassette tape recorder, and I would, like,
Oh,
sit when I was in the bathroom and stuff and just, like, do these, like, really dark, like, lyrics, like, doing my vocals and stuff and listen to it back and be like, "Oh my god, I should be a singer or something," and that was, like, pretty early on. Then got, like, really into, like, rap music and skateboarding, and then when I got into high school, like, my junior high merged with another junior high, and I met these kids who, like, played instruments and stuff, and I, like, went to one of their birthday parties, and they, like, you know, like, their parents, like, set it up, like, the garage door came up, and they started playing, My Own Summer by the Deftones, and I was like,
mm.
"Holy shit, this is so cool," and so I spent the night at, the guy who's playing guitar, Sky's house, and recorded a demo of me singing, "Bored" by the Deftones, and, dude, like, I mean
Did you do like the whispery vocals too that Chino
yeah,
does?
yeah, well, yeah, I was doing, like, the whole thing, and he, like, on his 4 track or whatever, like, to the song, you know, like, probably just over the song, and he went to school and was like, "Travis has, like, vocals," and then these guys found me, it was Matt and Ryan who were in Terminal. Matt was the guitar player, Ryan was the drummer, and they were like, "We hear you got, like, vocals." We're like, "We've been having a band for a long
This
time."
sounds like
Like,
a
they'd been
Napoleon Dynamite kind of like scenario.
it's so
Do you
goofy,
have
it's so goofy.
vocals?
They're like, We heard you have some vocals, like,
Travis,
you
give me those
should
vocals.
come." Yeah, they were like, Come try out or something," and, um, so I did, and they for however terrible and, like, I mean, it was so bad, you know, I had, like, a little kid voice, like, and my voice is still high and stuff, but it was, like, little kid voice, like, um, they let me, like, start being in their band, and they were, like, immensely, like, advanced and like musically talented. They were like really good players and had like cut their teeth playing. Like there was another band from small town Mansfield where we were doing this, Mansfield, Texas, called Embodiment. And
Oh
Embodiment
yeah.
had been like a death metal band
Yeah.
before this current time, and they could like play that shit and stuff.
Yeah, and
And
then they
so I
went
was
kind of like what like kind of alternative metal or something like that, right?
yeah, like kind of Deftonesy alternative metal, and it was still like awesome. And then there was no screaming and stuff, and it was just like rock, and it was so good. Like I still like I think today with like the heavy shoegaze thing and stuff, like Embodiment would be like a great band in that scene. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
they were just so good, and like all these low, they played seven strings, all these like low chords and stuff. But yeah, so I connected with them, and that was kind of the beginning of my that was at least the beginning of um playing music. I was like suddenly like in a band and stuff, and it was like kind of mind blowing. They took me to a show of two like local bands that were like, toured nationally and were like in that scene at a place called Club 412, which was like the hub in DFW. And you're laughing because of the 412 thing.
Yeah,
Like
it's just like
I
that's
heard
like every band, every club, they all were like some sort of like
you got to get it in
single
somewhere.
syllable or syllable word, and then like yeah, like a three digit thing.
And it's a Bible verse or whatever. But yeah, so it was like I think it was like Embodiment and Travail playing on like Halloween night, and they were just so sick. Like it was so cool, and I'd never been really to a show in my life, like a concert, let alone a show, and like it was just too sick, and so that was the genesis. Yeah.
It's so interesting. Again, like, I had a lot of those same experiences growing up, going to middle school, high school, going to those kind of shows. At the time, growing up in South Dakota, Lifelight Music Festival was like a big thing. I don't know if you ever heard of Lifelight. It was like Cornerstone, but way bigger, but it was free.
Wow.
So they would get like
Whoa.
usually, I think at the height they were getting like 250,000 people.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, it was like I mean it immediately like doubled the population of South Dakota.
What were
Whenever
the
the Lifelight weekend was.
who were the headliners? Like
I mean, they
that's a
would have
ton of people.
like, I mean, and so here, the other thing that was cool about Lifelight was they would have like kind of the more CCM, classic CCM artists like Newsboys or Audio A or
Hmm.
Switchfoot or,
Hmm.
whoever, Need to
Yeah,
Breathe,
yeah,
those kind of bands. But then they also had like a stage that was kind of more like the teen stage, which they would have like a lot of the Tooth and Nail, Flicker Records, those type of artists. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, like when I was a middle school, even before that, I was like even in grade school, I started going to Lifelight, and it's interesting. Like I had those kind of experiences of going to these kind of shows and being like, wow, I would love to do that, but it never got to a point where I'm like, I'm gonna actually learn guitar well enough to be able to do that someday, or I'm gonna learn how to sing well
Then
enough where I
yeah,
can do
you
that
just
someday.
be the singer. No, you don't have to learn well.
I'm not a good, but I never like learned how to sing well enough. So I never got to that point where I was like, I'm going to
Neither did
dedicate
I.
that, dedicate myself to that. So it's interesting. Like a lot of people, they would have these moments where they're like, oh, I'm going to like totally, that's what I want to do in life. And I feel like I had those sort of experiences, but I just never got to the point where I'm like, I'm actually going to dedicate and be disciplined in dedicating myself to this. But anyway, I
Mhm.
always find that interesting. Like I totally went a totally different career track, but I often like have this nostalgia, or not really nostalgia, this romanticizing around, it would be so amazing to like be in even a band, like a small band that just like tours around the country for a year, just playing shows. Like I would love to do that just for a year.
Yeah, I think that's a good time to do it for. But yeah, it was amazing, like getting to play shows, and there was like a real scene, like there was a scene here, and that was like maybe one of the most compelling things, like as I was a very young, kid and kind of teenager trying to figure out like who I was and like where, you know, you want to find out where you can fit in, but also like where do you want to fit in? And
Mm.
it was such a cool thing to be a part of, like, all these, like, musicians, and there were bands to look up to. There were bands that looked up to us, there was just, like, this whole kinda microcosm hierarchy of, like, things and the way they worked and, like, the way people helped each other and the way people, like, showed up and supported things and stuff that was just, it was really cool, like, maybe it was something that was neat outside of, like, sports or something in Texas,
Mm.
like, there
Yeah.
really wasn't like, what else is there, like, it was a cool thing to happen upon.
Football or terminal. Those are the only two things in Texas.
Choose one, yeah, or embodiment,
Sorry,
yeah,
three things, I guess. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about just how Terminal formed. So it sounds like you and a couple of the other guys got to know each other in high school, and I'm sure like that's where Terminal was born. Like, where would you kind of like maybe start to really put the like true origins of like, all right, this project is like Terminal. It's not just us hanging out playing some music anymore.
I mean, so those guys had, like they had been aware of that scene and stuff through, like, junior high and, like, maybe I don't know, like, maybe, like, intermediate school, like, maybe since, like, 5th or 6th grade, I don't know, but, they were, like, very serious from the get-go. It was like, "We're getting ready to, like, play shows and stuff." So, like, I just kinda, like, jumped into the deep end with that, and, like, they were, you know, I don't I wouldn't say, like, professional or anything, but, like, they were very serious about it and, like, had aspirations and, like, were gonna, like, start playing shows. Like, shows, that was the priority. It wasn't like, "We're gonna get a recording," which nowadays with, like, access to recording, like, maybe things start there a little more often, but for us, it was like, "We gotta start playing shows. We'll play anywhere, everywhere,"
Mm.
and, we would play several times a weekend, just anywhere that would book us with whoever would, be playing, trying to, I guess we're thinking, like, build a following, but I think we were, like, maybe more so, like, trying to get good and trying to, like, just put on a really good show and stuff, and, like, it was very, like, performance focused and stuff, so, yeah, we were just, like, playing all of these local churches, venues, and then, we were called Letter 12,
Oh, that's
kind of in, like,
right.
the point
Yeah.
that's worth talking about, and that's what we got. We were called that when we got signed, to Tooth and Nail, and, like, we finally got to open for, that band Travail that I talked about. They were, like, our heroes, and we played our set, and, like, they watched it, we, like, saw them from the stage because there weren't that many people there, and, we're like, "Oh my god," like, our heroes are watching us play, and they were like, "You guys are really good, like, let's do more shows and let's, like, kinda" the thing just kinda grew where suddenly we were opening for, when we became like that band that, like, when Under Oath came through town or, like, Norma Jean or whoever, like, we were getting booked on these shows, and generally, like, it feels like such a it was, like, stuff that we probably took for granted or, like, because we were working really hard, but, when we would open for these bands, a lot of times they liked us, and they were watching us, and they liked us, and they would, kinda connect, and we'd become friends, and now we're, like, texting, we're staying in touch, and we're, you know, continuing to, express our desire to, like, push this thing forward, and we opened for a really big show that was, like it was, like, this crazy show in, like, Arlington, Texas, and it was, like, Zayo, Unearth, God, I shouldn't forget the other bands because it was, like, 7 good bands, and we got to open, and the guys from Unearth
I'm just
watched
imagining you
us.
guys playing before Unearthed and Zayo. Like,
We yeah, and we did, like, and it
that's
was
just
like I mean, like, everything else was probably, like, the same like, we were heavier back then, like, we were a lot heavier, and
Would
the
you
guitar
scream?
player of yeah, yeah, screamed a lot, and,
Wow. Wait, are there any I don't know if I've ever heard any Letter 12 stuff. Is there anything on the internet that is out
not on
there that
the
you could like because I'd love to hear you like
y
legitimately scream in the way that you would have back then.
yeah, it was kinda wild, but yeah, I can send you some stuff. I'm sure I can track it down. I think Matt has it all on a hard drive or something, but yeah, we were, like, a lot
Wow.
heavier back then, and, the guitar player of Unearth, Ken Susi, was like, "You guys gotta make it up to Boston, and, like, I wanna record you guys. I'm, like, tracking bands now and stuff," and so we did this tour with a friend of our like, some friends, in a band called Tomorrow's Rescue that they were, like, great. They were getting, like, courted by major labels. They should have been, like, a Stained or something. They were too good, and we broke off from the tour and went up to Boston, recorded a demo with Ken from Unearth, and that was kind of our thing that we started shopping, recorded another demo, and then, that's when we recorded with a local guy in town named Braxton, who was also just in, like, a fucking hardcore band or and that was the one that we when we finally gave that to the Under Oath guys when they were in town, they took it straight up to Chad at Tooth and Nail and were like, "You should sign this band. They're awesome," and he, like, called us when we were in class in high school and was like, "Do you guys wanna get signed?" I'm like, "I am walking out of I'm walking out of class right now."
Yeah, calculus just finished.
Yeah. Oh, dude, like, not calculus, it was probably, like, pre-AP art or something. I was like, "I am out of here, like, get lost." So, yeah, so it
So
happened for
you
us, like,
did
very
you guys
young.
get signed sort of under the impression, or maybe for even you, and maybe even for Tooth and Nail, were you signed under the impression that you're sort of like more of a heavy band?
Yeah, I bet that they were so when we signed to Tooth and Nail, they were looking to do the thing that I think they did it for a few bands where they were releasing albums on Tooth and Nail and Solid State, and they thought that we were gonna be a band that they did that for, and when it came to writing the record, I was trying to push us away from, like, the singing hardcore, screamo thing and more towards, like, just a rock sound, like, with, like, like, some yelling and, like, heavy vocals and stuff,
Right.
but, like, more I don't know, like, Recover was, like, our hero band from Texas, Jim Eat World, like,
Right.
Glassjaw, those were probably, like, some of our biggest influences. Yeah, I was consciously wanting to push us away from that, mostly because I couldn't, that was what I was listening to, and I couldn't really, like, keep my voice on tour doing, like, the heavy
Mm.
stuff. I didn't Nowadays, everyone has, like, screaming techniques and things, and
And their coaches too. They've got their own
yeah, yeah,
coaches.
there are coaches and all that stuff, and, like, there was none of that back then, so I was just, kinda shredding my voice every night on tour live, so
Well,
touring was, like,
that's
really
interesting that
hard.
that's interesting. Like you guys and the label seem to have that impression. Did Solid State have or Tooth and Nail? Did Tooth and Nail have any sense of your singing voice? Because that's like for me as a listener of Terminal, I'm like that's what stands out or what seems to stand out the most. I mean, obviously
Mhm.
everybody in the band is incredible, but your voice is your singing voice in particular is so talented. Like, did they have any sense of like what was there in terms of your singing, or did they just only get kind of like the heavier stuff from you?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely by, like, the demos that Under Oath took up to them, it was mostly singing or whatever, but there was just more screaming, yelling, whatever it was that
Okay,
I was doing,
so it
like, in the
wasn't just like
mix.
a whole screaming song, and they're like,
But
we'll
yeah, yeah,
take a
no, well,
shot on
we
a
yeah,
band, and
we
all of a sudden now it's like no, it's just it's an emo band
they're like,
instead of a
"What?" Yeah,
screamo band or something.
yeah, no, I mean, it probably was a little bit, not what they expected because I think Under Oath was having, like, this like meteoric rise, and I'm sure they were like, this will fall in line behind that, and the album that we gave them probably couldn't have done that, or maybe it was like, but they had bands that they knew what to do with that, like Amberlin
Yeah,
May and
yeah,
stuff like that was
exactly.
happening. So like there were definitely other paths, but yeah, I think they thought we were gonna be like a little more on the edge or something.
That's interesting. Well, so you're obviously you're talking about kind of the signing and kind of those beginning years. So eventually you record the album, and again, obviously it kind of turns out a little like lighter than certainly Letter 12 was. Uh, I'm just curious about like it seemed as if like you signed you the album came out and then like quickly after there's the breakup. So it was so quick. I'm curious about like
Mhm.
around that time, and we can talk more extensively about the breakup here in a little bit. But I'd love to just like what was going on in that very quick space. It seemed like maybe like a year even.
So we recorded the album before we had actually signed a contract. They
Oh
flew
wow.
us up to Seattle, and like, we met with Brandon Ebel, and we did, like they kind of like were like, could be so cool for you guys, and we were like legitimately kids, we were 18 years
Had
old.
you guys you mentioned a little bit about like I was just like leaving like art class or whatever. Like had you graduated at that point yet, or were you still in high school?
We had not graduated when they like made us and when they were
Wow.
like, hey, we want to sign you, but we graduated high school, and then we were in talks and courting and all that stuff, and then a band had to like cancel some studio time, and they just had it was Aaron Sprinkle's understudy at the time. His name was Zach Hodges, and he was, I mean, so talented. He was like the engineer who's like doing all of everything, while like, when a producer gets to that point, somebody's doing all of the technical stuff, and
Right.
they've just taught them well and stuff. And like, I understand how that works, but Zach was like immensely talented, but he was supposed to record a band that I can't remember their name. They were like more on the Christian contemporary tip than like stuff like we were into, but like they were actually really good. Like they were kind of Coldplay sounding. They canceled, and Tooth and Nail called us, and they were like, "We've got an opening in October. Could you guys be ready to record an album? And like, would you do it and stuff?" And we were thinking about all of the producers we wanted to record with and stuff, and we just got together and we were like, "Yeah, let's do it." So I kinda just locked myself in the bedroom and just wrote like a madman, and we practiced all the time, and, um, went up to Seattle and recorded our album with Zach, in the basement of the Tooth and Nail offices for the most part. We did
Wow.
drums at Avast where, like, like legendary Seattle studio, like Modest Mouse,
Mm.
Minus the Bear, like all these cool things up there. Like they had recorded there, but that was it was yeah, it was like very fast paced, and we were not signed when like mixes were coming back and stuff. And we were like, should we shop these to another label? Is this like would that be like morally reprehensible? And we
But
ended up
you're so
signing with
young at
them.
that point too. It's like what you there's no way you would have ever figured out any contract stuff at that point unless you had like some lawyer. But like who what 18-year-old is even going to be able to like figure that out, right?
No, yeah, we ended up getting, Scott Bradford, who had done, like, the Thrice major label deal and stuff. Like, we got a good lawyer to be, like I mean, God, he was probably just, like, again, like, some, paralegals, like, looking over the thing, and he's like, "Cool, like, sign" like, "Sign it, guys." But he looked out for us a little bit and, like, trying to figure it out because Tooth and Nail was doing very long, uh, deals with, not co-publishing, but like split publishing. They would take some of the band's publishing rights and stuff, and we ended up signing something that we probably, like, fundamentally disagreed with, but it was I think we were just kids and we were just ready to, like, take a next step, you get so eager, so
Yeah,
yeah.
the sense that, and again, like I'm somebody who grew up loving Tooth and Nail, and I don't really have any opinions about Brandon Ebel at all. The sense I've gotten
Sorry.
from like Tooth and Nail at that time was, they would sign bands, young bands like you guys who are literally
Mhm.
like about to graduate high school, sign these bands for like 4 or 5 albums, and then if at any point they wanted to drop you, they would drop you, but if you were starting to become big, then you're locked in.
Yeah.
Like a band like Underoath, it's like, all right, we signed you. Now you're locked in for 4 years because you're on the rise and you're actually going to make money for us. Or if you're like a band that's like, all right, we're locked in for 4 albums, but if you're not going to become a big thing, then they're just going to drop you right away. That was the sense that's the sense that I've gotten from them.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was I think that is honestly a common deal structure in the industry is, yeah, there's, like you sign for the album, and then there are label options, so especially when you're, like, a young band, I bet there are different deals for, like, if you're, like, Taylor Swift or something, but, yeah, so it was like, I think we had the one record that we were locked in for, and then 2 label options, so if they wanted us to do a follow-up, we were in contract to do that, and if they wanted us to do a 3rd record, we were in contract to do that, but, yeah, like and joking when I said Brandon evil, Brandon did great things for a lot of bands. There was just when you're, like, young and punk rock, and then there's, like, this money-making machine, like, you sort of hate it, like,
Right.
even when it's serving you, you hate it because it's not what you love about music, like, I mean, I love that I was able to find out about all of these incredible bands because Tooth and Nail did a great job promoting them and growing exposure for them, but at the same time, you know, maybe you still kinda, like, resent the man or something, I don't
Right.
know.
No. Yeah,
Uh,
I get that. Yeah. What did again, I want to get to eventually the breakup, but as somebody who grew up loving tooth and nail bands like yourself, how did being a part of the business of tooth and nail maybe shape your enjoyment of tooth and nail bands, like or if it did at all? I'm just curious, like how did that relationship of actually being sort of a laborer of tooth and nail, if you will, how did that shape your like listening or fan experience of all these other tooth and nail bands that like you've loved and grown up with?
that's a great question. I don't know that it did I don't know, like, how heavy the role in shaping it was. I think for us, there was plenty of, like I mean, God, Tooth and Nail provided us the most incredible opportunity as, like, a local band from Mansfield, Texas, who got to record an album and live in Seattle for I was there for, like, almost 3 months, I think, because I had to go back to finish vocals. Like, we were having these incredible experiences, and that was cool. You would meet bands who were, like, kind of resentful and, like, hateful about the label. Everyone probably had, like, some negative things to say, which is, like, I think probably pretty normal, like, there's not an
Yeah.
employer or any like, what is beyond critique? Like, probably nothing, but it was interesting to see these bands that we were aspiring to their careers and seeing how they felt about, like, their futures based on, where they were and what was going on for them. And I think everyone is inclined to want more, and if you've made it this far, it's probably because you have a tremendous amount of belief in yourself, and, um, sometimes when you're not, just skyrocketing, you blame other circumstances, but I don't know, like, Chad Johnson, our A&R, was, like, the most amazing dude
He's
ever.
great.
Yeah, God, I love Chad. Um, we had a pretty good experience. I think we probably let them down more than they let us down, like, I think they tried they gave us, we didn't work with an expensive producer or anything like that, so they got in pretty cheap on our record, but, I do think that they were behind it until we, defaulted on the agreement.
Well, let's talk along those lines then. Like, what? Basically, my question is, why was there a breakup? I mean, I'm still like, and I feel like, were you on a labeled episode, like the labeled podcast
Yeah, I
with
did
Emery
one.
guys?
Hey,
And I'm sure I listened to that a few years ago, but I just like I still am like, I felt like the sound, everything was there, other than maybe like the 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 rise of getting the airplay or whatever it was, but like it felt like everything was there. It's just like it's like, oh, it's all there, and then it ends. And so I'm just curious, like what was the reason for the breakup?
so the breakup of Terminal was, that was it's a very, like, raw thing, like, and it's kind of still raw, like, I don't know, it's like this wound that heals a little bit, based on the people in our relationships, and then, like, becomes raw again.
Mm.
Or that's what it has been over time, but, so when Terminal broke up, on the last tour before we broke up, like, Lucas, who has now passed away, he passed away from cancer, I wanna say a few years ago, but like, now, like, just time is passing so quickly, but it was a few years ago. He was our bass player. Our original bassist was Kevin McCauley, and at some point we, like, let him go, and we got Lucas in the band. Lucas was playing with other bands, like, locally, and he was like a powerhouse live, like, he had just the moves, and he was just kind of like a thing to behold, and so we were like, "He's the dude who should play bass, like, he's got it," and, we got Lucas in the band, and, he and I, like, had just really started, like, grinding gears with each other, like, we were just not getting along, and I think, looking back, I guess I wasn't getting along with anyone, but, yeah, just some rub, like, there was some weird things, like, I think that I, like, put a lot of my heart and soul into writing the Terminal album, and, um, maybe being so young and in doing that, um, kind of took for granted how much all of them put their heart and soul into writing that album, and I think I was bearing more of the writer's share than anyone else, uh, by my own will. Like, that was also, like, a big change in the band, like, before, like, you remember back to the genesis when the whole thing started, I was a dude who, like, couldn't sing and recorded a demo, and they were like, "We're great musicians, come with us. We'll show you the way, we'll make you better," and they did. And I had started writing music and, like, writing the music, not just the vocals and melodies, um, and I think that was way more contentious and, like, harder for everyone than I realized, and I think if I had been a better and more diplomatic person at that time. Uh, I could have made that better for everyone, but I wasn't. I was an 18-year-old kid, and,
Yeah, how much do you
um
think of that, like, really is because, we look back on our lives and we're like, yeah, when I was 18 or 19, I was just like a dick. Like, that's just how I was. And probably most people, when they look back at their 18 or 19-year-old self, they probably are like, I would have changed some things. Like, I would imagine the tough thing is like probably one of the things that you maybe are most known for in your life is this thing that you did when you were 18 or 19. And,
yeah,
and
that's
also knowing the fact that you are an 18 or 19-year-old and that's going to like shape the dynamics of like what's happening at that time.
oh my god, you put that perfectly. I mean, like, that's also a weird thing. It's like, nobody calls me to talk about anything I've done since, you know what I mean? Like, it was a really special, important thing that happened in my life, but yeah, I mean, like Facebook, I hope you're not on social media because I think it's does weird things to people, and I am on it, and it does weird things to me, but, it shows me, like, my memories from, like, 6 years ago, and I'm like, "Oh god," it, like, makes my
And that
skin
was six
crawl, like,
years
the
ago.
things I said, the way I was, like, consciously, publicly communicating, and, yeah, we were young, and we were really young and had a lot of, all of our backgrounds, um I think there was a lot of, like, trauma and, like, challenges in all of them, and, like, none of us I don't think any of us, like, were, like, unloved or anything like that, like, I won't mistake how bad things can be for people, like, but, like, we're all coming from weird, like, brokenish homes and things like that, and, like, just stuff that you don't realize that, like, you're going to have to learn how to unlearn some of your behaviors and how to, like, consciously deal with stuff, that, like, life and relationships will continue to throw at you, but I don't know if I'm making excuses for myself here. I'll jump back into the thing. Lucas and I were really not getting along, and, um, I kinda, like, put the band and our booking agent and everyone on this notice. It was like, "He's out or I'm out." And it was, like, this really tumultuous night when our van was broken down in Phoenix, and I was mean to Lucas, I'll never forget that, at the pool. We were, like, waiting for our van to get fixed, and, was on the phone with our agent, all of us are on the phone probably with people, and, uh, things carried on from there. Um, Maybe a few days, a few dates into California, and I woke up one night, and I'll tell the full story. This is actually, like, really weird. I woke up one night to our buddy who was coming on tour with us. His name was Chris, and he woke me up in the van, and he was like, "Hey, man, you've been asleep in the van. You need to come inside." I go inside, and I see these brownies, and I'm like, "I'm gonna eat one." And he was like, "Those are weed brownies. Like, do not." So I was like, "Okay, well, cool." And everyone was asleep, you know, on floors and couches everywhere, and there was, like, just this, like, table full of liquor at this guy Charlie's house. Like, Charlie, like, he signed, like, the Starting Line and Days Away and all these amazing bands, and he was just like it was the band house. If you came through, like, our booking agent very early on hooked us up with Charlie. He was, like, the best host. He was cool. He cooked well, like, he was just,
Mm.
uh, an awesome guy, but there's all this, like, tons of bottles of liquor. I just went in and, like, we had a code in our band, like, we didn't drink, we didn't, cuss, or we tried not to cuss, and we didn't, like, have sex with chicks or, like, like be promiscuous outside
Right.
of like probably like real feelings and real like commitment to a relationship. And I know that that was probably so off-putting and square to every band we toured with, but that was a great uh, code and accountability to have as a young person going on tour, like as like a
Mhm.
16-year-old through 18-year-old going on tour. Like, man, that was indispensably helpful to not just mess my life up. But I started like sipping from all of those bottles and I went to bed like I went to bed before I felt anything and I woke up in the morning and there was no one in the house. And I was like, where is everyone? And I opened the front door and our van's still outside and the van doors are open and everyone's sitting in there and I'm like, oh shit, like this isn't good. And I went out there and I sat in the van and I listened to every one of those dudes basically be like, "Hey man, you've made me miserable and you're an awful person." I don't know if it's awful person to do that with or awful person, but it felt like awful person,
Right.
and it was incredibly rough. Um, like on tour, you kind of like I don't know if this is true for every band, but it was for ours. Like you'd kind of like spend some time with someone. Like there's like a week or 2 of tour that you're, like, hanging out with Matt a lot, and then you're, like, hanging out with James a lot, and then you're hanging out with Lucas, and, like, you're all sick of each other, and so you're just kinda, like, you know, I don't know, it's kind of like an ebb and flow to maintain relationships.
Mhm.
Overexposure is real in any relationship or whatever, but, yeah, I listened to those guys just lay into me, and, our booking agent came over. He was in Orange County, so he came over and he sent all of those guys to watch a Batman movie at the theater, and he just came and talked to me and he was like, "Hey man, like if you want to keep this going, uh if you're not done, they're done. Those guys are going home. Like they're done. If you want to keep this going, you need to let me know if you believe in it, if you believe in yourself, like whatever. I believe in you." And so um they the last image of the thing was them like, I got 1 bin of merch, my, like, half stack Marshall cabinet, my guitar, and they took off back to Texas. And I was there on the curb, like and so we rented a minivan, and I finished the tour acoustic or just, like, playing my guitar electric and singing, and, that was a wildly like, I think that was a traumatic experience that I've, like
Mm.
in therapy and stuff, like, I've had to, like, go back and face that one, and I'm not saying I'm a victim in that, like, I don't think that anyone or I don't know, I'm not willing to say that anyone, like, told me I made them feel bad who I didn't make feel bad, like, that wasn't what killed it for them, but, it killed it, and that was the end.
Again, as like somebody who I don't remember exactly like how old I was at the time, maybe 11 or 12, but I just remember like thinking like this band is so freaking good, and then it just all of a sudden I'm like it just ended, and then I've like maintained that, right? So I just I've maintained that feeling around this band could have been so big. Like I truly still believe that. Like I think you guys
Same.
had the talent. I think your vocal talent was there. I think you wrote catchy songs, but also like had kind of this like different edge to you. There's like everything about it. I'm like also like that music scene at the time. Like there was a lot of really great kind of like emo like alternative stuff coming on at the time, even outside of like the Christian music
Mhm.
industry. So I'm just like everything about this. I'm like this could get big, and it ended really quickly.
Yeah.
And and those guys went on. I know like a number of them went on to form O Sleeper, and I've always loved O Sleeper. But but yeah, I've always like thought I'm like it was there. Like it was so close to like I think eventually maybe breaking through and hindsight's 2020 and who knows
Oh,
what could have happened, but
yeah,
I am like one of those people. I'm absolutely convinced like everything was there to become really big.
yeah. It would have been so cool. I don't know, like, it would have been cool if I was self-aware enough to know I was, like, making them feel bad. It would have been self-aware like, it would have been cool to know, how to talk to each other and, like, express, like, ourselves, I think all of us had no real, like, communication skills, no real role
Right.
models for that. There was so much that was missing, but yeah, like, it kinda just went up in flames, and it was, a real shame, because I think I feel how you do, like, I don't think I've truly believed in anything that I've been a part of, as much as I believed in that band, and some of that was just young, dumb confidence, like, most of it was, but, we also had something really special, and those guys were like, when we got back together later in life and stuff, it was still, like, just the most magical thing when we would all get together. It was hilarious, goofy. It was like, a beat wasn't missed, and
Mhm.
that was like, um, that was validating, that there was just something special with that group of guys.
Mhm. Well, along those lines, like where would you say you're at right now with Terminal? Obviously, you guys played at Furnace Fest a few years ago. I was there at the show. I think I was at the entire show, and I was one of those people somewhere around the stage, just singing along with my, just singing my
Dude,
heart
there
out.
were
Um,
there were people singing along. That was so
well,
cool.
I don't. I mean, I'm sure there were other people, but I certainly was one of them. But yeah, like where would you say things stand now? I think especially knowing kind of putting in context, like there are a lot of bands right now from that world that we grew up with, we love, or that you guys
Mhm.
like knew and played with. That there was like a period of time where, especially because of the music industry and a million other things, where people, bands like broke up or went on hiatus, and now you're like starting to see like bands coming back together, playing some shows together, or like even like maybe once every 5 years you're starting to see them like put out some
Yeah.
new music or whatever. I'm just like in that context, knowing that like it does seem like it's a better time to be able to be a band where everybody's living all around the country and every now and then you're still playing some shows or whatever. Like knowing that context, like where do things stand with Terminal?
So we did reunite, and, like, we reunited, initially to do, like, some benefit shows for Lucas,
Mm-hmm.
when he got sick with cancer. uh, like, I'll never forget Ryan calling me and being like, "Hey, man, you gotta come to the hospital," and going and being with Ryan and Lucas at the hospital, and it was, that was the beginning of just things changing, and, we did some shows for him, and that was, like, probably the best that being in that band will ever feel, and it was so cool that it was, like, I got to experience that, like, it was, um, like, kind of a moment where we all could be together doing that thing and really realize how special it was together, and, that was cool, and then we got asked to do Furnace Fest, after Lucas had passed, and we had our buddy Landon. He was, like, super talented, like, Fort Worth musician, like, his band Cleanup's in the studio again, like, if you haven't listened to Cleanup, like, super sick, like, math rock, like, he's insane, he played bass for us, but, um, we did the thing again, and then we got back from Furnace Fest, and that was super fun. They haven't asked us back, so that is what it is, uh, but it just some of the relationships kind of fell apart again, and
Mm.
and, like, kind of fell apart, like, uh, reminiscent of old ways or whatever, where it's like you think you're past this thing, and, I guess I don't know. I would say the state of terminal is probably, like I think that, like, maybe it's willful ignorance to expect that those, the scar tissue from that
Mm,
experience that, like, really rocked all of us, could just fully heal. So, you wanna believe that, like, we're all older and we're all adults and, like, this is just a thing for fun, but, like, it kinda just became not that again, and, um, I think that probably never happens again.
mm,
Um, Realistically, we had tried to write a little bit, like, when Lucas was dying, essentially, he, was like, "Promise me that you guys are gonna, like, write some more music because this was cool," and we were all like, "Yeah, we're gonna do that," and we didn't, but, yeah, I think that thing is done. I
mm,
think, Furnace Fest was the last ride, and what a good one it was, like, we got 2 really amazing shows out of it. Um, Getting to, like, honor Lucas and honor
mhm,
what Terminal was, and I felt proud of both of them. I felt proud of all of it, um, but I think it's done. Yeah.
mhm. I mean, that's totally a fair answer. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, if people are watching the YouTube video, which again, if you are listening to this just only audio, also check out the YouTube channel because we got that going on too. But if people aren't watching, clearly you've got guitars in the background, you've got a microphone right there, you've got a studio setup, so you're clearly like still doing stuff with music. So I'd love to just kind of hear where you're at now with music, post terminal.
Gosh, so after Terminal, I kept Terminal going without the guys, and I don't know if anyone listening caught us on tour with, I did a tour with Cartel
Ooh,
and, the Receiving End of Sirens up the East Coast with, like, hired guns, friends. It was just, like, a group of friends and people I'd met that, like, that was cool. Came back home. It was honestly, like, super unnerving because I was, like, playing guitar the whole time, and I was terrible at guitar, so, um, then we went on an West Coast run, and when I got to Phoenix, like, a group of guys were like, "Hey," I mean, they were like, you talked about, like, pure volume. They were MP3.com. Like, they were, like, this band that I was just like, "They're God." Like, they're better than May, they're better than everyone. They were like, "Hey, can we come to your show?" And I was like, "For sure, you're all on the guest list." And they came and watched us play, and then they were like, "Hey, will you come out to our van?" And they showed me all of these instrumental demos, and they had a deal on the line with Equal Vision and a production deal with Mark Trombino, who had done, like, Jimmy Eat World, Clarity, uh,
wow.
Blink-182, Dude Ranch, like, just
Jesus.
he was the guy. He was I mean, Clarity is, like, that's that's my god level emo record,
Right.
and so I went while we were on that tour, I, like, kinda snuck into a studio with a guy and recorded some vocals over one of their songs and went and jumped into that band and, showcased for the label and booking agent and everything, and, um, that was what was post-terminal, and then that didn't go long, like, that's its whole other story that we don't have to get into, but, yeah, I've been recording music and writing music, and that's, ever since, and it's just, maybe it's a testament to how much I took the Terminal guys for granted or bandmates for granted. It is really hard for me to finish music without the other guys, and I haven't
Mm.
found the other guys since then. So,
Well,
um,
let's say, for example, let's say again, just as total hypothetical, but let's say you did find some people that's like, God, that's like a drummer love to work with, or like that's a great
I,
guitarist I'd love to work
I
with,
found
or
a drummer I'd love to work with.
great, you found. So, uh, like, let's say, and again, I don't know what like other feelings would be about this, but I have always been curious. Like, let's say you started a project with the name Terminal. Like you sort of revamp it, but it's like entirely new people. Like it may be like the old guys, maybe they would feel like maybe they have feelings around that. But I've always been like curious, like there is a name, there is a sort of, I hate to get into the marketing terms of it, but like there is a branding around Terminal. Like people have expectations, and if you were able to write songs like that again, would there, do you think there would even be interest of you doing that, other like again, and maybe there's other feelings for other, the guys that were in the band, maybe they have feelings around that, but I've always been really curious. Like, I remember David Bazan for years was, he did his own solo stuff or whatever, right? And I remember
Hmm.
seeing like an interview years ago now where when Pedro the Lion got back together, sort of as Pedro the Lion, but it was for him, it was
Hmm.
more of like a rebranding. Like obviously there's like nobody from like the original Pedro the Lion versions or whatever that are still in the band. It's just David Bazan.
Sure. Yeah,
Um, but
he
like there
was
was
the
something
guy.
about like branding it under Pedro the Lion rather than his like own name that like he just knew that it was just going to sell better and it would make it more sustainable for him to do it that way. So I'm curious, like maybe there are thoughts around that, but I'm curious, like if you did find like the people that were in the right fit to make something like Terminal again, would you do that?
Yeah, so that's dude, best question. You did good. Yeah, I think that that is like the complicated part is because I do feel like I've written like a ton of Terminal songs. And it's hard to imagine that it would be as good without them, but it's very emotionally like the same way that like the thing ended, like it's just socially, emotionally complicated in a way that, like, I found a drummer that I was working with, this dude, shout out Kyle Adams. He's like Kyle Adams on Instagram, like, dude, he is the god level drummer. He is just so good. Like, it's insane, and he's the perfect drummer for that project, but, like, Ryan was our Ryan was our rudder, like, he was our, he he was the engine behind the band, and he also wrote really cool parts, and, he expressed that, like, he didn't wanna be a part of it anymore, and if you guys wanted to do this without him, like, do it, but it's not really that socially simple, like, we're all friends and stuff, or,
Right.
like, to some degree, we've been friends or we're friends and, like, are friends, and I think it just feels like at this point, like, like we're all like almost 40 years old, like that's so old. And I think it feels like I just like don't want to make people I care about feel bad.
Mm.
As much as I would love to like release another Terminal record, I've written a ton of material and I think it would be like badass with the right musicians. I like less or so want to make like the people who shared that, like, thing feel, like, bastardized or, like, just, like, detached or, like, let go from it, even if they did let me go at some point and
Right.
it was kinda like, "You got free rein, man," and then suddenly, like, Furnace Fest wants us to do stuff or Lucas wants us to do stuff, and we're all back in it together again. There's all of that to say there's a very complicated history,
Right.
and, um sometimes you think like, "Well, who are you what are you waiting for? Who are you waiting for?" But I love those dudes and, um, maybe it's better to not what if I released this thing that I thought was, like, Good Terminal, and everyone was like, "What is that? Like, that's terrible." And then they're just like, "Why did you sully the name? Like, we had this mystique and legend and, like, in a niche group of people, like, there are some people who really, like, respected that and, like, I don't know, there's pressure in that, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I totally get that. I will say, either way, I'm gonna be happy. I'm glad that How the Lonely Keep exists in the world. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, probably top 25 favorite album of all time for me.
Shut up. Are
And
you
also,
serious?
oh yeah, for sure, top 25, absolutely.
What the hell?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
insane.
absolutely. Oh yeah, for I mean, again, like this is a I still distinctly remember, and this was a couple, maybe 2 or 3 years after the album had come out, but I still remember getting my first iPod. It was one of those little iPod minis where it was like a clip. You would like
Oh,
clip
yeah,
it
yeah,
onto your
yeah,
shirt or
yeah.
whatever, and you could fit like maybe 100 songs on it or something like that. But I still remember downloading, and I always only had 100 songs, so I had to like be very selective of like what was gonna go on there. But I still remember having the entire How the Lonely Keep album was on there, and and that
That's
was like the first,
absurd.
and I probably had downloaded it from like LimeWire. I'm sure, I was 14 years old. I definitely did not pay for you guys' album.
Hey,
But
you
I
know
remember,
what?
yeah,
That's a
listening
great
to that
thing
whole
too.
thing in full all the time in like science class in like seventh or eighth grade or something like that.
We got no money from it, so I steal, kill, and destroy, man. Like, whatever has to happen. That's I mean, that's incredibly flattering, dude. Like, I
Yeah,
can't
and
believe
obviously there's like albums that I grew up with when I was seventh grade or eighth grade, and I was listening to, and they are not albums that I still listen to. But again, How the Lonely Keep is one of those albums that I continue to listen to at least once a month, the entire album all the way through. I mean, I adore it. I mean, it's one truly like one of my top 25 favorite albums of all
okay,
time. Thanks so much for just sharing about the history. I know that there's like just tough moments, there's unbelievable moments, and yeah, for you to just be really vulnerable is great. Well, along, are you ready for your top five most
let's
influential
do
albums?
top 5. I'm
Let's do it.
so ready.
All right.
Okay,
So sometimes I forget to tell people before we start that we're gonna do a top five influential albums. So they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do in the moment." But it seems like you've prepared a little bit, right?
I feel I actually have a curveball for you.
Oh, nice. Let's hear it.
I'm gonna do my tooth and nail top 5
Okay.
and my top 5, and they are different.
Okay, great.
So
Let's hear it. Which one do you want to start off with?
which one do you want me to start off with?
Mm. Let's start off with Tooth and Nail, and then we'll jump into your other
I
top
like that.
five.
That's
So they're
that's what I
entirely
was
different.
hoping
There's no
for.
crossover between each.
There's honestly not, and, like,
Wow.
I know, right?
All right, let's hear it.
Sorry,
All right,
sorry,
top
Tooth and Nail.
five Tooth and Nail artists or Tooth and Nail albums for you.
Albums, yeah, number 1, Beloved Failure On.
Ah, of course.
Just
Another band that honestly kind of has like a similar-ish like career trajectory as Terminal.
so
They
weird.
released a one album and they break up. I think they had like an album before them before Tooth and Nail,
Had an
but
EP,
still.
yeah. Yeah, and I was, like, the whole time I've been like, "Why can't you guys just get it together?" Like, best live band I've seen,
Yes. So
saw them
talented.
at Club 412, like, the local Christian hardcore venue, and they blew my mind. Like, the first time I saw them, I was like, "Why are 3 of them playing guitar?" And then they started playing, and I was like, "This is
This
the
makes
coolest
sense.
thing I've seen." The drummer screaming, and he had, like,
Yeah.
the Josh Scoggins haircut, like, the long in the front, short in the back, and it was great. Embodiment, Narrow Scope of Things.
Of course. I mean, you talked about them a lot at the beginning, so I'd imagine that
Yeah,
they're going to be
I
in there.
have to. Yeah, Embodiment, Hold Your Breath is amazing. Their death metal thing, like, all of the guys in the band, like, would say, like, that's their best record. I didn't love it, I loved Sean Corbray's vocals. Listen to Narrow Scope of Things, it's like when it came out, like, when I heard it, I was like, "I wish his scream was more like Chino or something," but, like, it's, like, the most brutal, like, rip your throat apart scream, like, beautiful singing parts, like guitar, like everything is in line. Um, Me Without You, AB Life.
Oh, AB Life. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was where I got into them, and it's very like Pumpkins reminiscent. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
guitar, like it's just that's what I liked. And like everything they've done is it's just unimaginably good and cool. But
Yes.
like especially their later releases where he's gone back to like yelling and stuff,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
Red Cow and all that. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But
Pale Horse is my favorite album of theirs by far.
oh,
They are probably one of my most seen bands live. I don't think they're certainly not number one, but they are up there probably like top three most like bands I've seen live most.
they're incredible. Yeah, we opened for them, Beloved, and I think Norma Jean
Oh my
headlined or
God, it's like
something.
what I would have been, what I would have done at that time in my life
It
to have
was
seen you guys, all four of you together.
it
Oh my
was it
God.
was the best show of my life. You know, like it was like I couldn't have played with bands that I loved more, and like I was like sitting with like the Beloved guys and like Aaron from Me Without You on a couch and like talking to them at this venue because it was like a venue space and then like living room and rooms and stuff. Like it was very weird. But the Juliana Theory, Emotion is Dead.
Oh yes,
They're
great
just
album.
they're just they were like the best pop rock thing and like really elevated all of that. And then my last is Ludacris Throwing Myself.
Of
Was
course.
so dark. So dark seeing them play live in that era and Durr looked like, you know, like Edward Scissorhands and he's like playing the guitar with his teeth and stuff and like Josh Scoggins is like doing all of his weird performance antics. Like it was sublime. Like I was like nothing has inspired me more towards music than like seeing that band play live.
Yeah.
Like it was too good. And it's
Yeah,
not on
like the
Spotify?
Chariot, even even when it became the Chariot, like Scoggin and the whole band was always known for like crazy performances. But the funny thing is, like, as much as the Chariot's known for that, it's like you should have seen them when they were ludicrous, or obviously like even early Norma Jean. It
Norma
was like
Jean, yeah.
that when they
Oh
were
yeah,
playing like
Scotty
small little
just
youth group basements or like going to
they
like skate parks or something playing, like that was when Norma Jean was nuts.
they taught everyone how to like throw their guitars and like do the live show. Like everyone
Yeah,
learned that from them, you know,
yeah,
like Beloved learned that from them. Like they were the leaders. Uh
yeah.
it was so good. So that's my tooth and nail
That's a
top
great
five.
list. That's a great list. All right, let's hear your like your sort of I don't know like non-tooth and nail regular list. I don't know how you would
Yeah.
describe it, but let's hear that list.
You said most influential.
Right.
So that's what I've got. I think it has to be, or do you want me to go in chronological order or like
Whatever order you want to go.
okay, I think chronological is more fair because this probably changes, but number one or number the first one, Counting Crows, August and Everything After.
Oh, interesting.
There are so many people who hate on the Counting Crows.
I'm not one of
Like
them.
they're they're not like a they're not like a super respected band. And they did a lot of like commercial stuff and things, but I when I was like really young, that album came out in '93, I believe. Um, I remember like riding around in my dad's Jeep Cherokee when my parents were getting a divorce and just listening to that album and being like, this is the best music. And to this day, like Counting Crows, you know, not exclusive to that album, but I love that album. I think in terms of like lyricism, um, an emotive vocal, like the way that Adam Duritz like expresses himself, like was it was unique and it was like a weird thing that like seems like it shouldn't have worked, but the songs were that good,
Hmm.
so they blew up and they got big and they had Mr. Jones, which is like
It's gonna help.
you know, Perfect Blue Buildings is a great sleeper track off that album.
Hmm.
And I've met like few people um, who who love and respect Counting Crows. Like the guitar player of Fear Before the March of Flames. I don't know if you remember that
Yep.
band.
Hmm.
Loved that band. Uh, he was like a huge Counting Crows fan, and so we just like bonded over that. Like that was like a
Dude.
thing. But yeah, Counting Crows, August and Everything After is undeniable. I have my list in front of me. Second, chronologically only, Smashing Pumpkins' Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Of course.
Uh, I mean, Siamese Dream is probably like just as good, but
Yeah.
that record was like when they really like piqued my interest, and I felt um, just overcome by how good that band was. And I don't think anyone will ever make a double album greater than Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness since,
Yeah.
it's undeniable. It's their thing for me was like the dynamics. Like they could be like super heavy and
Yeah.
doing these kind of like almost like broy like like kind of riffs, or just the saddest like lowest chords. Like To Forgive is probably my non-single favorite song off that album. To Forgive by Smashing Pumpkins off of Melancholy and the Infinite
Yeah.
Sadness.
Yes. And for some, you know what's interesting about like the song specifically 1979 off of that album is that
Yes.
like I often think like if I had heard that album back in what year was that released? 97 maybe?
It was like 6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 96, 97. Um when I think back to like what like music sounded like in 1996 and 1997, 1979 would have felt very futuristic. Like it just sounds so ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I there's just something, maybe it's like the like chords themselves or something, but it also sounds very nostalgic.
Mhm.
Like at the
Mhm.
same time of like sounding very futuristic, it also sounds nostalgic. Like it's able to hold that
Yeah.
so well. That song in
He
particular.
yeah, and like Smashing Pumpkins, like in general, it's funny, like I've been like playing guitar with my dad, and he's like, "So what songs do you know?" And I'm like, "I don't know how to play anyone else's songs. I just sit down with a guitar to like write and record, and like I don't even know how to play my songs." Uh, but Smashing Pumpkins, when you go and like look at their songs, it's very classic rock. A lot of their like chord
Right.
structures and things, and he was very influenced by that. And like Gish shows that off a lot more. But yeah, like 100%, like there's, like, the weird drum machine and, like, synths playing along, and it's still I don't know. His dynamic vocal, though, is, like he had the best ability to, like, be, like, nasty with his voice and then, like, very sweet and soft and, like,
Yes. Yeah.
maybe in the same, like, line, like, often in the same line. Like, it was
Yeah.
like, that was yeah, I love that band
Yeah.
forever.
Immensely
Seeing them with
talented.
my brother was like I got to see them live playing, like, the hits from that era. Like, they were doing a tour doing, like, uh, Siamese Dream, Melancholy, a little bit of Gish, a little bit of, like, Machina, which was, like, Stand Inside Your Love, and, like, some of the songs were great too. But that was a highlight. Onward, um, Glassjaw, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Silence.
Oh. Mhm.
If you hear the early Letter 12 demos, I am doing it's kind of embarrassing, like, I'm just, like, trying to sing like Daryl from Glassjaw, so I'm like, "What?" and,
Yeah,
like,
just
doing
that
all that,
really high.
and just yeah, and it's like, he can do it. The imitators always just sound like fools, and I sound like a fool, but, like, that's what I'm doing. Um, yeah, like, the guys that I met James or Matt and Ryan through. Um, they had gone to see Deftones live, and Glassjaw opened, and they had this cassette that was like Glassjaw singles, and they played it for me, and I was like, "That sucks. That band's terrible." And then like you listen to it like five more times, and suddenly it's like, this is going to change everything. And I think
Mm,
Glassjaw is like undeniably one of the most influential, inimitable bands of our lifetime. Like, just so good.
yeah.
Weird, pretentious, like just everything. They were so good, but that record is great. My deep cut is everything you ever wanted to know about silence, like the namesake. That record, like when he comes into the big vocal, it's kind of like a painstaking listen as this like jazzy thing happens, and he just kind of like fumbles through stuff. But when it digs in, man, it's so heavy and
Hmm.
emotional, like killer.
Yeah, great band.
Um, then probably like if we're ranking things by like like non-chronologically, I think this is my number one. Recovers EP. All right. I looked up how to pronounce this. Ceci n'est pas recover. It's like
Oh,
it's based on like the old, like, This Is Not a Pipe painting. It was like a famous
okay.
painting, and it's like, This Is Not Recover. It's Ceci n'est pas recover. Um,
Yeah, it looks very French.
very French. And they're all
Yeah.
wearing like leather jackets, and they look so cool.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of this band before.
Dude, when you hear them, you're gonna be like, "That is what Terminal wanted to be." Or, like, people don't see that as much as I think they could.
This is
That
an
was
epic album cover, by the way. This is awesome.
it's sick. Dude, the songs, like, from start to finish, it is 5 songs of 2-minute long, like, perfect, aggressive rock pop songs. Like, Jimmy Eat World took them on tour a lot, like, playing huge shows and stuff. Like, they were supposed to be it, and they should have been it. And they had like a uh, weird industry story, which
Mm,
I can tell the whole thing, but I shouldn't right here. But it is 5 songs of perfection. I think every track's probably a deep cut on this for most people. Push Push, song number 2, is my highlight of that. Um,
hmm,
It's, like, perfect pop, heavy, does everything. They had, like their guitar player, like, yelled and had, like, a gruff voice. Dan Keyes, the singer guitar player, like, had this really, like, perfect, like, emo rock voice. It was the blueprint. Like, when I heard that in Ryan's car when it came out, I was like, "This is the best thing I've ever
yeah, we're
heard,"
we're
and
just
to
gonna
this
make
day.
that.
Yeah, well, to this day, like, I went to, like, go to the gas station to, like, get gas and probably, like, pick up some beer or something for me and my partner, and I put it on, and I'm instantly there. Like, it
Mm,
just never stops hitting. It is timeless. You will love it. Like, 5 songs of perfection. It's perfect. And
heck
then
yeah.
my last pick, because we're going chronologically, is Margot and the Nuclear So-and-So's "The Dust of Retreat."
I don't know if I know that, but Margot and the who?
Oh god, you're in for such a treat.
Yeah,
Margot and the Nuclear So-and-So's.
this is a
Probably
great
what an
this is a
insane band name.
great name for a band.
So, like, when they're early on, I became fascinated, so I heard the song "Quiet as a Mouse," which is what I will recommend from that album. Quiet as a Mouse, it's like heavy emo Weezer with, like, cellos and stuff, and
What?
it's so good. But, I watched an interview, and they're like someone's interviewing them for TV, and they're like, "Where did your name come from?" And, Richard Edwards, their, like, always cool singer, is like, how much can we talk about doing drugs on TV or something, you know, like, it was he's cool, he's, like, painfully cool, like, it hurts how cool he is, but, that band, all of their records since, incredible, like, they went into a major label deal, had a bad run, like, just like Recover, and kept making records, and then now he makes solo records under Richard Edwards, and, like, the best songwriter of this time, you know, like, of mid-aughts on, like, he doesn't miss, like, every album is full of, like, maybe 4 decent songs and, like, 8 great songs, like,
Wow.
he's undeniable. We got to the band I was in Phoenix, we got to the last show we played, I flew back in town from Austin, and we opened for them. I got to meet them, and it was, like, electric. It was
Wow.
so cool.
That's sick.
So,
Well, I'm gonna have to check out those last two bands. That is exciting. Not always
you've got
do we hear like a band that we've never heard of before in these top five lists, but those are two bands I've never heard of, and I am super excited to check them out.
I love music, and I love a ton of music, like, I'm not wrong. Like, you have a lot of material to enjoy, so you're gonna love
Nice.
it.
Love it. Awesome. Sweet. Well, Travis, we are at a point now where you get to plug whatever you want to plug. So maybe there's music stuff that you want to plug. Maybe there's business, whatever you want to plug. Maybe it's a political stance. It doesn't matter. What do you want to plug in the world?
Yeah, I'll forego a political stance and, musically, I think I'm always working on it. Like I said, please check out the drummer Kyle Adams. He is god level. He played on one of my tracks that I was hoping to release. I haven't really got it there yet. Just need to like bring it up to the level he put it at. But like he's on Instagram, like playing drums on all sorts of people's stuff, and he is like too sick. Like you'll love it. Kyle Adams. But I think if I need to plug a thing, I've started a foundation. So I have a dog named Sherman. He's a Chihuahua. He showed
Ooh.
up in my front yard one day before my ex and I were going over to have dinner with Ryan from Terminal and give his youngest son his first haircut. It was like kind of an important meeting, so I'm waiting by the door. Storm's rolling in, and we had 2 big dogs at the time, and they go nuts. And I look out the window, and, there's a little dog out in the front yard, and I looked away from him, and then I'm like, "I gotta go try to help him." So, I ended up catching him, and he's been my dog for 8 years, and so I've started a foundation called the Look Down Foundation. And
Ooh.
the Look Down Foundation is, it's just a reminder to people that, like, a lot of times we look up to the sky, it's gorgeous, we look up for inspiration, for, like, a guide you know, a guiding light in our lives, but sometimes you need to look down. You need to look
That's right.
down, and, like, the chihuahuas are all down there. So,
They are certainly
that's
down there.
they're down there, and so I've started the Look Down Foundation, and I just I hope people support it, I hope the message grows, like, when you look down, there are generally 2 eyes, 2 big eyes, 2 bug eyes looking up at you,
That's right.
and I just I I couldn't be more grateful for him and for the foundation.
Would you ever recommend the Look Down Foundation for people who are going across one of those swinging bridges? You know what
I
I'm talking?
think
You
that
ever seen those swinging
yes,
bridges in the
yeah.
movies where you're like you got to get from one side of the crater to the next, and then people got to go through, and
Have you ever
you know what I'm talking
crossed one
about?
of those in real life? They're so
I,
disconcerting, like,
maybe like on like a
you're
playground park when I was like 6 years old, but I don't think I've gone through like any, or I haven't gone on any that are like legit.
But that's a valid experience because that translates. The skill that you learn on that playground is what's going to get you
Okay.
across like the big boy bridge. But yeah, I think a lot of people who cross those bridges, if they had the sense and the companionship to like look down and see their chihuahua, like it will stabilize you. It will
Mm,
stabilize you in a way that, um, you know, that's what people need. Life is a big swaying bridge, and if you can
that's right.
look down foundation and like see those eyes staring up at you, it makes crossing that bridge a whole lot easier.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Wonderful. Well, I did not know about the foundation, and so I will look up the Look Down Foundation on the internet.
I like what you did there.
There you go. How about that? Wonderful. Well, Travis, thank you so much for chatting more about your music career. Terminal, again, Terminal is one of those bands that have just been a part of my life for a very, very long time. So it really is an honor to chat more about Terminal, and I hope for the best for the Look Down Foundation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. You've been great. Appreciate you reaching out to me. Honored, like truly honored that you wanted to hear anything I had to say. So
Of
thank
course.
you.